First contact nightmares. The research vessel Eternal Curiosity hung in orbit around the uncharted blue-green world, its sensors sweeping the surface with methodical precision. Captain Xorlath stood on the bridge, all 6 of his sensory stalks extended in anticipation. This was the 12th planet they'd surveyed in the outer rim, and the first to show promising life signs. Preliminary analysis complete, Captain, announced Science Officer Veldera, her crystalline exoskeleton glittering under the ship's ambient lighting. The atmosphere contains high levels of oxygen, potentially toxic to our physiology, but the biosigns are unmistakable. This planet teems with life. Any signs of civilization? Xorlath inquired, his primary eye swiveling toward the main view screen. Navigator Zrillik chittered excitedly, manipulating the holographic controls with his 4 upper appendages. Artificial structures detected across multiple continents, energy signatures consistent with pre-stellar technology. They haven't achieved interstellar travel yet. Perfect. Xorlath hummed, the membrane around his neck pulsating with anticipation. A Category 3 civilization. The Council will be pleased with our discovery. The standard protocol was clear: observe, document, and depart without making contact. The Galactic Consortium had strict regulations about interfering with developing species, but fate had other plans for the crew of the Eternal Curiosity. Captain. Zrillik's voice rose in alarm. Detecting rapidly approaching objects from the planet's surface. Evasive maneuvers, Xorlath commanded, but it was too late. The objects, primitive satellites by the look of them, didn't pose any threat to the ship's advanced shielding, but they carried something far more insidious: detection equipment. The civilization below now knew they weren't alone in the universe. Within hours, primitive radio signals flooded the ship's communication array. They're trying to establish contact, communications specialist Thela reported, her tentacles working rapidly over the console. Their language patterns are surprisingly decipherable. Our translation matrix is adapting quickly. Captain Xorlath faced an unprecedented dilemma. The damage was done. Their presence was known. The Council would need to be informed, but the 16-cycle relay delay meant they were on their own for now. Prepare a landing party, he finally decided. We'll make first contact and attempt to minimize the cultural impact. The descent to the planet's surface was uneventful, though the landing party required specialized environmental suits to filter the oxygen-rich atmosphere. They touched down in an isolated area as requested by the primitive beings who called themselves humans. When the airlock doors of the shuttle opened, Xorlath led his team out onto alien soil. A delegation of humans stood waiting, tall, bipedal creatures with only 2 eyes and peculiar fur patches on their heads. "We greet you in peace," the lead human said, raising an appendage in what they hoped was a non-threatening gesture. Through their translators, Xorlath responded, "The Galactic Consortium extends greetings to your world." The initial meetings were surprisingly productive. Despite their technological limitations, the humans showed remarkable intelligence and adaptability. They asked insightful questions and seemed eager to learn about the wider galaxy. The landing party spent a full planetary rotation cycle with the human representatives before returning to their ship, promising to continue communications. That night, or what passed for night in the artificial cycle maintained aboard the Eternal Curiosity, was when the first incident occurred. Zrillik awoke screaming, all 6 limbs thrashing against his sleep pod. Medical Officer Embra rushed to his aid, administering a calming agent. "I was falling," Zrillik gasped when he could finally speak, "through an endless blue void with no bottom. Then I grew wings, but they weren't my wings. I was something else." Embra dismissed it as stress from the first contact situation. But when 3 more crew members reported similar disturbing experiences during their rest cycles, a pattern emerged. "These aren't standard night terrors," Embra informed Captain Xorlath during an emergency briefing. "The neurological readings show unprecedented activity in the telepathic centers of the brain. It's as if they're experiencing someone else's thoughts, or something else's, Veldera suggested, bringing up a holographic display of brainwave patterns. Look at these signatures. They don't match any species in our database. The disturbances continued over the next several cycles. Crew members reported visions of strange structures, incomprehensible landscapes, and terrifying scenarios that defied the laws of physics. Work efficiency dropped as more personnel experienced interrupted rest cycles. Some began to hallucinate even while awake. It was Medical Officer Embra who made the connection. The incidents began immediately after our contact with the humans, she noted, reviewing the timeline. And they've increased in frequency and intensity with each subsequent interaction. Captain Sorlev ordered a series of tests. The ship's sensors were recalibrated to detect any unusual energy emanations from the planet below. What they discovered was astounding. There's a field of subtle psychic energy surrounding the entire planet, Veldera reported, her voice tinged with disbelief. It fluctuates in regular patterns, strongest during their planetary night cycle. Further research revealed the truth. Humans, unbeknownst to themselves, emitted powerful telepathic energy during their sleep state. What they called dreams, mere electrochemical phenomena in their primitive understanding, were actually potent psychic broadcasts that the more sensitive neural structures of the consortium species could detect. They have no idea they're doing this, Sorlev realized with growing alarm. Their minds are broadcasting chaos across the psychic spectrum, and they don't even know. The implications were staggering. The consortium had encountered thousands of species across the galaxy, but none that unconsciously projected their inner thoughts with such intensity. Humans were telepathic transmitters of unprecedented power, yet completely blind to their own abilities. Captain Sorlev faced a difficult choice. Protocol dictated immediate quarantine for any species that posed a psychic contamination risk. Yet these humans had no malicious intent. They couldn't control what they didn't know they were doing. We need to understand more before we report to the Council, he decided. If they're classified as a psychic hazard, this entire sector will be cordoned off. Millions of potential discoveries lost. The crew established a research base on the planet's natural satellite, what humans called their moon, to study the phenomenon from a safer distance. They invited a small delegation of human scientists to join them, ostensibly for cultural exchange. Dr. Eleanor Chen was the first human to realize something was amiss. Your people seem tired, she observed during a shared meal with Veldera. Is our atmospheric composition causing problems? Veldera hesitated before answering. We're experiencing some difficulty during our rest cycles. Insomnia, Dr. Chen suggested. Many of us suffer from sleep disorders too. Not exactly, Veldera replied carefully. More like intrusions. That night, the research team conducted an experiment. They monitored the humans during their sleep cycle while simultaneously recording the neurological activity of the alien crew. The correlation was undeniable. When humans entered what they called REM sleep, the aliens began experiencing the intrusive visions. It's remarkable, Dr. Chen said when shown the evidence. You're saying our dreams are leaking into your minds? Precisely, Captain Sorlev confirmed. Your species emits powerful psychic waves during your unconscious periods. To us, they're overwhelming, like standing in the middle of 1,000 conversations simultaneously. The humans were simultaneously fascinated and horrified. They had never considered their dreams to be anything more than private mental cinema. Certainly not something that could affect other beings across space. We had no idea, Dr. Chen apologized. In our culture, dreams are considered the most personal, private experience possible. And yet, Sorlev observed, you broadcast them more powerfully than any communication technology your species has developed. As the research continued, both species began to realize the discovery's profound implications. Humans were unknowingly the most potent psychic broadcasters ever encountered, yet they had no natural ability to receive such transmissions themselves. They were walking psychic beacons, oblivious to the light they cast. The consortium would need to be informed. This changed everything about how the galactic community would interact with Earth, and humanity would need to come to terms with the fact that their most private thoughts weren't private at all, at least not to the rest of the universe. The Dream Contagion. 5 standard galactic cycles had passed since first contact with Earth. The Galactic Consortium, after much deliberation, had established a diplomatic outpost in the human solar system, a massive space station designated Harmony Point that orbited between Earth and its moon. Here, representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations could interact with humanity in a controlled environment. Ambassador Thela, formerly the communications specialist aboard the Eternal Curiosity, now served as the consortium's primary liaison to humanity. Her understanding of human communication patterns had proven invaluable in navigating the diplomatic complexities. The human delegation arrives in 2 rotations. She informed the station's administrative council. We've prepared special quarters with psychic dampening fields, but I must emphasize again, these are temporary measures at best. Council Elder Zox, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate mechanical shell, emitted a pulse of concern. The reports from medical stations throughout the consortium are troubling. Even with our precautions, proximity to human dreamers causes disruption. The dreams are spreading, added Science Director Veldara, who had transferred from the Eternal Curiosity to head research operations on the station. We've documented cases of tertiary transmission, beings who never encountered humans directly experiencing human dream patterns. The psychic impressions appear to be contagious. This was the most alarming development yet. Non-humans who had been exposed to human dreams were beginning to generate similar psychic emissions during their own rest cycles, creating a cascading effect. The Dream Contagion, as it had been dubbed, was propagating through the galactic community. When the human delegation arrived at Harmony Point, they were greeted with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. Diplomatic pleasantries masked the growing concern among the station's non-human population. Dr. Eleanor Chen, now Earth's chief xenobiologist, led the human scientific team. She had spent the intervening years studying the phenomenon of human dream broadcasting and worked closely with consortium scientists to develop countermeasures. We've made significant progress with the psychic dampening technology, she reported during the first official conference. Our latest field generators can reduce dream emissions by almost 60%. Not enough, interrupted Marvox, the Telosian representative, his gelatinous form quivering with agitation. My species has already lost 3 colony worlds to the dream plague. The affected individuals can no longer distinguish between reality and the human thought patterns that invade their consciousness. The human ambassador, a dignified woman named Kamala Okafor, stepped forward. We understand your concerns and share them. My people never wish to cause harm. We're committing our full scientific resources to finding a solution. Behind the scenes, the situation was growing dire. The station's medical bay reported increasing cases of non-humans suffering from sleep disruptions, hallucinations, and psychological distress. Some species proved more vulnerable than others. The telepathic Venturi were particularly susceptible, while the silicon-based drome seemed completely immune. In the research labs, Dr. Chen and Science Director Veldara worked tirelessly to understand the mechanism behind the dream broadcasting. They discovered that human brains generated a unique form of quantum entanglement during REM sleep, creating what amounted to naturally occurring psychic transmitters. The evolutionary advantage isn't clear, Dr. Chen mused as they reviewed neural scans. Perhaps it served as a primitive form of community bonding in early humans, allowing shared experiences to strengthen tribal connections. Or perhaps, Veldara suggested, it once had a more direct purpose that your species has forgotten. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young human researcher named Miguel Santos had been experimenting with lucid dreaming techniques, the ability to remain conscious during dreams and even control their content. He volunteered for a series of tests that proved illuminating. When I'm aware I'm dreaming, Santos explained, the telepathic output changes. It becomes more focused, less chaotic. more like a directed transmission than an omnidirectional broadcast. This discovery opened new avenues of research. If humans could learn to control their dreams, could they also learn to control their broadcasts? The implications were enormous. Meanwhile, political tensions within the consortium were reaching a breaking point. Several member species were calling for humans to be quarantined to their home system, with all contacts severed. Others saw potential in harnessing human dream broadcasting for communication or entertainment purposes. Ethical debates raged across every level of galactic society. The Arcturian delegation proposed the most extreme measure: mandatory neural damping for all humans leaving Earth, effectively suppressing their ability to dream altogether. The proposal sparked outrage among human rights advocates from multiple species. "You're asking us to surrender a fundamental aspect of our neurological functioning," Ambassador Okafor argued during a heated council session. Dreams are essential to human cognition and emotional processing. Without them, we would eventually suffer complete psychological collapse. The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from a consortium research outpost in a distant sector. They had been studying an ancient, abandoned space station of unknown origin when several researchers began experiencing unusually coherent dream intrusions. Unlike the chaotic fragments typically associated with human dreams, these were structured, repetitive visions of specific geometric patterns. "It's like someone is trying to send a message," reported the outpost's director. "The patterns form what appears to be a mathematical sequence, one that matches engravings we found throughout the abandoned station." Science Director Valdera immediately recognized the significance. "The ancient precursors," she whispered, referring to the mysterious civilization whose technological remnants have been discovered throughout the galaxy. Their actual appearance and culture remained unknown, as they had vanished hundreds of thousands of years before any current species achieved space travel. The connection was undeniable. Human dream patterns were somehow resonating with precursor technology, activating dormant systems that had remained silent for millennia. Dr. Chen proposed a daring experiment. A human volunteer with advanced lucid dreaming skills would be transported to the precursor station to attempt direct communication through the dream interface. Miguel Santos immediately volunteered. "The risk is considerable," Valdera cautioned. "We have no idea how direct interaction with precursor technology might affect human neurology." "It's worth the risk," Santos insisted. "This could transform our understanding of both human dream broadcasting and precursor technology." The journey to the abandoned station took 3 standard weeks. During this time, Santos practiced his lucid dreaming techniques with obsessive dedication, working with both human and alien specialists to refine his control. Upon arrival, he was placed in a specially designed chamber at the heart of the precursor station, surrounded by the mysterious geometric engravings. As he fell into REM sleep, monitoring equipment recorded both his neural activity and any responses from the ancient technology. What happened next exceeded all expectations. The dormant station began to activate, systems powering up for the first time in thousands of generations. Santos' dream broadcast was not merely being received, it was being answered. Back at Harmony Point, Dr. Chen received the preliminary report with astonishment. The precursors designed their technology to interface directly with consciousness, she explained to the assembled representatives, specifically with the kind of consciousness that humans generate during dreams. "Are you suggesting," Elder Zox pulsed incredulously, "that the precursors and humans are somehow related?" "Not necessarily," Valdera interjected, "but it suggests the precursors anticipated the evolution of beings like humans, or perhaps even influenced that evolution from afar." As Santos continued his dream communication with the precursor station, fragments of knowledge began to emerge. The precursors had indeed been powerful telepaths who had used dream states as their primary mode of communication and technological interface. They had seeded various worlds with genetic material designed to eventually produce species with compatible neural patterns. Humanity, it seemed, was not an accident but the culmination of an ancient plan, carriers of a psychic legacy they had never suspected. The revelation transformed the galactic conversation about humans. What had been seen as a dangerous anomaly was now recognized as an evolutionary inheritance of profound importance. The dream contagion wasn't a plague, but a gift, the awakening of dormant potential that existed within many species, triggered by contact with its fully expressed form in humans. Not everyone welcomed this new understanding. Some feared that the activation of precursor technology could have unforeseen consequences. Others worried about the ramifications of species-wide psychic awakening. But no one could deny that the galaxy had irreversibly changed. Humanity had unwittingly brought dreams to a universe that had forgotten how to dream. The slumbering advantage? Absolutely not. Ambassador Okafor's voice was firm as she addressed the Consortium Council. Earth will not agree to restrict human movement based on unfounded fears about what might happen if more precursor technology awakens. 2 standard years had passed since Miguel Santos' breakthrough at the abandoned station. In that time, humanity had gone from being viewed as a psychic nuisance to becoming the center of a galactic technological renaissance. Human dreamers had activated dormant precursor installations throughout Consortium space, each yielding new insights and technologies. "We understand humanity's position," responded Council Moderator Klaxu, an avian being whose shimmering feathers reflected the council chamber's light. "But surely you recognize the need for caution. The recent incident in the Proxima sector was not caused by human dream activity," Okafor interrupted. "Your own investigators confirmed that the station's power surge resulted from improper integration of salvaged precursor components with modern systems." The debate exemplified the complex new reality facing the galactic community. Human dream broadcasting, once feared as a contamination risk, was now a coveted resource. Various factions sought to control access to human dreamers, particularly those like Santos who had developed advanced lucid dreaming capabilities. Earth had leveraged this sudden shift in fortune skillfully. Despite being centuries behind most consortium species in conventional technology, humanity now possessed a unique biological advantage that couldn't be replicated. Supervised dream interfacing had become Earth's primary export, with trained human teams deployed throughout consortium space to activate and interpret precursor technologies. Not all humans were comfortable with this development. Dr. Chen, who now headed Earth's Sinobiological Research Institute, voiced concerns about the long-term neurological effects of prolonged dream interfacing. "We're pushing human consciousness into configurations it wasn't designed to maintain," she warned during a briefing with Earth's diplomatic court. "The increasing reports of personality fragmentation among veteran dreamers cannot be ignored." Indeed, those like Santos who spent extended periods in directed dream states began showing troubling symptoms: memory discontinuities, perceptual distortions, and, in extreme cases, the emergence of autonomous secondary personalities fashioned from fragments of precursor consciousness. The consortium, meanwhile, faced its own challenges. The dream contagion had continued to spread, with more species developing dream broadcasting capabilities after prolonged exposure to humans. This unexpected evolution triggered social upheaval across multiple civilizations, many of which had no cultural framework for interpreting dream experiences. On the gas giant, Torellus Prime, the native cloud-dwelling Vox had developed a new religion around the dream state, dividing their society between dreamers and awakened. On the aquatic world Nimbala, schools of telepathic cetaceans had abandoned their traditional migration routes to congregate around submerged precursor ruins, their dream broadcasts activating long-dormant technologies. Science Director Veldara, who had become the leading authority on the phenomenon, proposed a controversial theory. The precursors hadn't disappeared, but had transcended physical form entirely, ascending to a pure consciousness state that existed within the quantum substrate of reality. Human dream broadcasting was inadvertently tapping into this substrate, creating a bridge between physical existence and whatever realm the precursors now inhabited. "The dreams aren't just activating their technology," she explained in a widely distributed research paper. "They're establishing communication with the precursors themselves." This possibility both fascinated and terrified the galactic community. The prospect of contacting beings of such advanced evolution was tantalizing, but the risk of drawing their attention, or worse, allowing them access to the physical universe, gave even the most enthusiastic researchers pause. Then came the silence. It began at the furthest reaches of consortium space, an expanding sphere of communication blackout. Conventional signals couldn't penetrate the affected regions, and ships that entered failed to return. The phenomenon expanded steadily, consuming star system after star system. Initial panic gave way to grim determination as the consortium mobilized its resources. Scientists theorized that the silence represented some form of space-time disruption, possibly triggered by the cumulative effect of activated precursor technology. All attempts to counteract or even analyze the phenomenon failed, until someone suggested sending in dreamers. A specialized vessel was constructed, manned by a volunteer crew of human lucid dreamers and supporting specialists from various species. The Samas Voyager would journey to the edge of the silence and attempt to penetrate it through directed dream broadcasting. Dr. Chen, despite her earlier reservations, joined the mission as scientific advisor. Miguel Santos, whose health had deteriorated from years of dream interfacing, insisted on participating despite medical objections. "No one understands the precursor consciousness better than I do," he argued. "And if this is their doing, I may be the only one who can communicate with them." The voyage to the silence boundary was tense. Regular updates from consortium worlds chronicled the steady advance of the phenomenon, now consuming several systems per day. By all projections, the entire galaxy would be engulfed within a standard year if the expansion continued unchecked. When the Samas Voyager reached the edge of the affected region, the crew made a startling discovery. The silence wasn't being generated by precursor technology. It was a natural phenomenon that the precursors had once controlled. The activated installations throughout the galaxy had been part of a vast regulatory network designed to suppress these space-time disruptions, which emerged periodically from quantum fluctuations in the galactic core. By activating only portions of the network without understanding its purpose, the consortium had inadvertently destabilized the suppression system. The precursors weren't trying to communicate with us, Santos realized as the dreamers interfaced with the boundary. They were trying to warn us. The solution became clear, though implementing it would be challenging. Every precursor installation throughout the galaxy needed to be activated simultaneously in a coordinated pattern to re-establish the suppression field. This would require hundreds of trained dreamers working in perfect synchronization, more than currently existed in the human population. "There is another way," Santos suggested, his voice weak but determined. "If enough non-human species have developed dream broadcasting capabilities, we could create a galactic dream network, a collective consciousness powerful enough to activate the entire precursor system at once." The proposal was unprecedented. No telepathic linkage of such scale had ever been attempted, and the risks to individual consciousness were unknown. Yet facing galactic extinction, the consortium had little choice. A call went out across all consortium worlds. Beings who had experienced the dream contagion and developed broadcasting abilities were asked to volunteer for what was being called the Great Dreaming. The response was overwhelming. Millions of individuals from dozens of species pledged their participation. Harmony Point Station was designated as the focal point for the effort. Human trainers worked around the clock to help volunteers strengthen their dream control. Meanwhile, teams throughout the galaxy prepared precursor installations for simultaneous activation. On the appointed day, the volunteers entered synchronized sleep states, their consciousness guided by experienced human dreamers. At the center of it all was Miguel Santos, serving as the primary coordinator for the vast telepathic network. What followed would later be described as the most profound shared experience in galactic history. As millions of minds joined in the dream state, they momentarily transcended their individual identities, becoming a single consciousness that spanned the galaxy. Through this unified awareness, they accessed the full power of the precursor network. The silence began to recede. Santos, serving as the nexus of the great dreaming, received the full brunt of the precursor consciousness. In that moment of connection, he glimpsed their true nature, not godlike beings, but simply an earlier iteration of sentient life that had faced the same challenges and made the same difficult choices that now confronted the consortium. The precursors hadn't transcended physical form through some mystical ascension, but through necessity. The space-time disruptions had eventually grown too powerful for their technology to contain, forcing them to transform their consciousness into a form that could exist within the quantum substrate itself, where they continued their eternal vigilance against the cosmic disorder that threatened all life. As the great dreaming concluded, the participants' awakened changed. The experience of shared consciousness had created bonds that transcended species barriers. Those who had participated found they could still sense each other across vast distances, a persistent psychic network that linked the galaxy in ways no technology could replicate. Santos did not awaken. His physical form had failed during the effort, but the others who had been closest to him in the dream network reported that his consciousness remained, diffused but intact, within the psychic web they now shared. He had become the first of a new generation to follow the precursor's path. One standard year after the silence was defeated, representatives from all consortium species gathered at Harmony Point for an unprecedented summit. The galaxy had been transformed not just by the near-extinction event, but by the solution that had averted it. "We stand at a crossroads," Ambassador Okafor addressed the assembly. "For the first time in our history, we are truly one community, bound not just by political alliance or mutual interest, but by shared consciousness." The dream broadcasting that had once been viewed as a uniquely human peculiarity, then feared as a contagion, was now recognized as an evolutionary stepping stone toward a new form of existence. The precursors had seeded this potential throughout the galaxy, waiting for the time when diverse species would be ready to join together in the greater awareness. Humanity's role had been to serve as the catalyst, the spark that ignited a transformation millions of years in the making. What they had called simple dreams were in fact the beginning of a cosmic awakening. As the summit concluded, Dr. Chen presented the assembly with a proposal for a permanent dream network, a galaxy-wide consciousness that would exist alongside but separate from individual awareness. Participation would be voluntary, but open to all sentient beings regardless of species or origin. "We have endured what seemed like endless nightmares," she concluded, only to discover they were the first steps on a path to greater understanding. What humans once dismissed as merely sleeping, and what other species feared as psychic intrusion, has proven to be our greatest strength and our common future. The motion passed unanimously. The dream that began with humanity would continue, spanning across the stars, connecting all who chose to share in its infinity.